Anyway, Brandon, you can go ahead and run with it.
Great. Well, I'm going to share my screen if that's all right. I've got a PowerPoint to lean on here, but also I think we've got Peter Johns on the phone, and he's a teammate of mine. But my name is Brandon Bickness. I work on XCEL's electric transportation team. We work on commercial, residential, all kinds of programs that we'll go through kind of at a high level with you, and happy to answer any questions that you might have. So, Peter, are you on the phone?
Looks like you're all by yourself, Brandon.
That's all right. That's all right.
Hey, Brandon.
There, now he's on me.
Hey, Brandon, it's Peter. Am I coming through at all?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, sorry. The Zoom, for whatever reason, wasn't working here with the app, so I called in, and I think you got my deck, so you can just kick it over to me whenever you're done. Cool.
This is why Peter is impressive, right? He knows his slides without having to look at them even.
Some days.
That's great. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, wonderful. So we've done introductions. So at a high level, to kind of review XCEL's greater EV vision, we'd like 1.5 million EVs in our service territory on the road by 2030, replacing gas-powered models. That's 20% of all the vehicles in our service territory and a 30-fold increase in EVs. These are pretty lofty goals. $1 billion in customer fuel savings annually by 2030. That's part of our vision to be not only the fuel supplier, but in being the fuel supplier for vehicles, to be selling more electricity and therefore pushing rates down, which has always been a priority for XCEL. An EV would cost, and this group probably is well aware of this, right? Being EV drivers, but $700 less a year on average to fuel than a gas-powered car at current rates. $1 less per gallon equivalent. And I think that's one goal that really impacts this group, and that speaks to ways that we can help to keep your rates lower. Things like time of use rates and the managed charging that we're coming out with. And again, we'll go through some of that in a second. 5 million tons of carbon emissions eliminated annually by 2030 with clean energy. So that's 3 tons of carbon reduction per vehicle. So EVs fit our strategy. Speaking to the emissions reduction, you may have had conversations, but this is a really good example of, particularly in XCEL Energy territory, the difference between carbon emissions produced by a gasoline vehicle compared to that same amount of energy being produced by our current grid. And it's where we stand right now, we're at less than half of a gasoline powered car by 2030. And we have some very ambitious renewable energy goals. If you haven't read about that yet, I highly suggest, but we want to reduce that to even half of what it is now or less. Ways that we help out right now, there are kind of some goals: create awareness and understanding through education, advisory services, and the like. Minimize complexity and hassle factors. So if any of you have had to have a charger installed or had to push your EV to a charging station, understand that's something that we want to help overcome. Reduce EV and charger infrastructure costs. We directly fund, and again, we'll get into specifics here in a second, but we directly fund charging equipment, EV supply infrastructure, home wiring, income qualified rebates, vehicle rebates, just decreasing costs overall, right? Increase access to charging for all segments. So this is one of my big ones. So I work particularly in the multifamily world, right? Apartments, condos, and the like. And there's a lot of barriers to getting charging installed. And I think if there's any on the call that live in those types of buildings, you probably are aware of that. So we want our programs to be the stepping stone that gets you over the barrier of being able to charge in places where it might not be easy to get installed. This is probably the biggest focus for the company, but that's focus on equity for income qualified customers. So not only are we trying to reduce emissions in general, understanding that there's inequity in who's impacted by the emissions created both by generation and by gasoline powered vehicles. But we also want to make this stuff accessible to those who may not be able to afford it otherwise, right? Ways that looks in Minnesota, we have we're partnering with a car sharing program to provide income qualified chargers and cars to income qualified communities. In Colorado, we've been approved for some income qualified rebates. We have some pretty steep goals with school bus charging, with public transportation, with electric micro mobility, like your e-scooters and e-bikes and the like. Lower cost by charging at off-peak times. It speaks to like our time use rates, right? We can work with you to make sure that we're charging at times when the grid isn't producing a lot of pollution because we're buying from peaker plants, right? So if you're charging at night, that fits real well with our charging curve when times when other people aren't using their air conditioning. Creating intuitive tools. And this looks like right now a fleet tool, for example, that collects telematics data to say, here's the vehicles you have now, here's the vehicle that would easily be able to replace it based on, how you drive and where you are. But in addition to that, it tells you, maybe where is charging necessary, how much charging is necessary, what capacity of charger is necessary. It costs more to run a DC fast charger than it does a level 2, right? So do you really need to be able to charge that quickly, or can we gather some telematics data and find out how much time these things dwell, figure out if less charging capacity is actually the right fit. So speaking to, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, but keeping bills low. If we're the fuel supplier, if XCEL is entering this kind of new territory as being the fuel supplier for commercial, for residential vehicles, rates decrease for everybody, right? So we see our mid case, and this isn't the 1.5 million vehicle vision. The mid case is at 3% of the market for our EV, or for our electric production would be EV charging. But to our vision, 7% would be, right? So if we're adding that kind of net new sales of electric charging, not only are you going to charge less for the fuel that goes into your car, but you'll be charged less for the electricity that fuels your home. So programs aren't the only way that we planned to do this. So you might notice if you live in XCEL territory, all the XCEL logos on cars and meter reading cars and trucks and cherry pickers and the like, right? So the XCEL plans to also lead by example and electrify the fleet. We'd like to have all sedans electrified by 2023, all the light duty vehicles by 2030, and 30% of medium and heavy duty vehicles also by 2030. And as you can imagine, that's a significant number of vehicles. So specifically in Colorado, what's happening, in the middle of May in 2020, we submitted a transportation electrification plan, which is a pretty robust set of the comprehensive programs to cover all the segments that we could figure we could help with EV charging, EV purchase, education advisory, and the like. So it includes 20 plus programs, and you can see a little overview here, but we've divided them into these portfolios, and we'll go in depth in a couple of these. But a residential portfolio looks like, home wiring rebates, home charging service. Multifamily housing, we offer EV supply infrastructure. Now that's everything that it takes to wire up the chargers from our transformer, right? Charging services, for a monthly fee, you can get XCEL provided charging equipment. And a new construction rebate. So that new construction also has an option for us to help with wiring. So in places where construction companies or developers or whoever's building multifamilies has a code requirement to be EV ready, EV capable, or EV installed, we incentivize going beyond that requirement, and we hope to impact the amount of charging that's available from the start at a multifamily. Similar to multifamily is our commercial portfolio. So providing that supply infrastructure, the optional charging service, community charging hubs for communities that may not have access otherwise to charging. So this looks like, street parking with a DC fast charger and 4 level 2s, or public city parking with level 2 charging. And includes, we were talking about some of that EV micro mobility, places to hopefully eventually charge bike share, scooters, the like. And limited own and operate. XCEL will be, and this is new to the utility world. XCEL will be operating DC fast charging stations starting in 2022. So that's a DC fast charging station located in an area where it may not be the best business model for your larger DC fast charging providers. XCEL is going to try to fill in the gap there. Advisory services for residential, fleet, and community. That fleet advisory looks like that telematics gathering tool. Residential advisory looks like outreach at auto shows, in dealerships. Peter will talk in depth about some pretty fun stuff going on there. Community outreach and EV planning with our municipalities. Our research, innovation, and partnership portfolio is kind of the most flexible of these. Included in that is $2.2 million funding for school buses that meant to be dispersed in 2022 to really try to get some of those buses into that world. And we've already been working with some school districts in the metro and Denver here on their school bus charging. And we found that's a really exciting front for EVs. And that they save a ton of money, a lot of maintenance. It's just getting that charging infrastructure installed might be the tough part, and that's where we want to come in to help, as well as in this portfolio funding the actual vehicles themselves. Other research, innovation, and partnerships look like partnerships with startups and communities and any other organization who has a good idea for an electric vehicle program that we didn't include in this transportation electrification plan and maybe want to include in the next one. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is the purchase and lease rebates. And again, Peter's going to have some good information there, but that looks like income qualified rebates when you buy an electric vehicle, both on used and new vehicles. Again, speaking to equity being a big priority here, we also have income qualified rebates specifically for charging equipment in multifamily, commercial, community charging hubs. Oops. So our commercial programs and residential programs focus specifically on three segments. Home charging includes multifamily and residential, single family, and duplexes, and anywhere where you're charging at night, at home, or during the day at home, right? Doesn't matter. Charging for fleet operators, and that speaks to that telematics gathering program and the EV supply infrastructure for fleet operators to make it easier to overcome those barriers. Understanding that maybe your average fleet manager doesn't have a ton of time to be investigating these installs. We want to help. And then public charging. Charging available wherever you are. Estes Park, right, for example. Not in our service territory, but I did go visit the ChargePoint site there at the Visitors Center the other day, and that is pretty cool. So we're working on some similar sites that are in XCEL territory, and very excited about that. Some key barriers to address with these programs, though: lack of awareness and information. I think a lot of you are electric vehicle owners, right? So the first days when you were starting to look at this stuff and comparing, I've got this gas vehicle, how's my lifestyle gonna have to change to have an electric vehicle? Surprisingly little, I would hope, but that's something we want to educate people on. So we know, hey, it's easy to get a charger. XCEL makes it easy. Or you can save money on fuel. Or what range do you really need when you drive 6 miles to work every day, right? Initial upfront cost, that speaks to the infrastructure, the charging equipment, the wiring in your home, anything that XCEL can help pay for up front, considering you're going to be buying your fuel from us ongoing for a long time after. And then suboptimal incentives to charge when energy costs are lowest. This is something that doesn't necessarily fit into the, well, especially the public charging model right now. You're not paying anything different to charge during critical peak pricing events, when we're buying a whole bunch of electricity from peaker power plants. No one passes that information through to you, but you might want to charge at a different time. If you could charge for cheaper at night, would you go charge at night? Then this looks like optimization at the residential level to put you on a set schedule that matches up with the average times when it's most effective to charge. But it also looks like working with public charging providers. So I'm going to close out and then hand it off to Peter after this slide, but we have some general program formats. the ways that we help. And I've gone through a couple of these, so we'll go through this slide really quickly. But residential marketing outreach to help accomplish that goal of education looks like, again, participating in auto shows, participating in meetings like this. And thank you again for having us here. Outreach, advertising, Peter's pillars inside of the dealerships that help people know what it looks like to once you get your EV home. Community planning, working with our existing partners in energy program at XCEL to help communities establish EV plans, right? Also working with our communities when big developments are coming into town, or when, you know, City Hall needs charging for fleet vehicles. That's part of that. And those fleet customer assessments, that gathering of telematics data and charging, siting, ongoing operations information, and originally the vehicle suitability tool. Lowering costs, you know, we pay for, in commercial settings, the EV supply infrastructure. We have some competitive programs there. So again, that's XCEL owning, installing, and maintaining anything it takes to get from the big green transformer outside to the charger in the house, right? And that, or the charger in the commercial building or multifamily. And that looks like a dedicated service. So you don't have to worry about siting anything inside of your existing electrical room. You don't have to worry about what existing capacity you might have, and we can help work through what's the capacity outside. But you also have a relationship then with the utility ongoing with us to maintain that infrastructure, to make sure that stuff works, and to work with you as you kind of grow that charging. Charging equipment, you still have the option in most all the programs to bring your own charging equipment if you decide to, but we'll also help lower upfront costs by providing charging equipment for a monthly fee rather than you paying it all up front all at once. Rebates look like, again, those vehicle rebates, home wiring rebates, charging equipment rebates, and then time varying rates. Again, you pay less in a time varying rate for charging at night because it's easier for us to provide you electricity. Makes sense that should be passed on to you, right? A couple of things that I would definitely plug in this meeting are the help navigate the process pieces over here. Specifically, this ev.xcelenergy.com. If you haven't looked at that website yet, it's amazing, and it does a really good job of providing information wherever you are in the electric vehicle journey. So if you have friends or family members that are maybe just starting out and they don't know the different types of charging and want to learn more, there's a Charging 101 page. But if you're maybe already have 4 electric vehicles, for example, right, and you are ready to install a new charger, there's a cost estimation tool on there that helps you to kind of realize how we can help. Not only that, how much it might cost you to install it yourself. And then on the commercial side, and this is a big one, we're launching our web pages and an intake form on the 25th of this month. So if you have commercial spaces of any kind or multifamilies, you can submit this super general, like 4 or 5 question intake form, and we'll hook you up with an EV advisor, someone who's kind of a concierge to walk you through the process, understanding that there's a lot of options, a lot of information coming at you, and we really have an opportunity to help there. So now we kind of covered a general overview of what we got going on in Colorado. I'll probably turn it over to Peter here. If you're on the phone, Peter.
Hey, Brandon, real quick. It's RJ. How you doing?
What's up, RJ?
Hey.
It's been a little bit. What's happening?
Hey, I'm just checking. Did you say June 26th, the intake form will open up?
June, did I say the 26th? The 25th, I'm sorry.
Oh, I missed it, so thank you for clarifying.
No problem. We're really looking forward to it.
Excellent, thank you.
And even if you're not interested in the programs, anybody on this call, take a look. We're really proud of the web pages that are coming up, and really proud of this process. It's having been informed by an interim program we've been working on, which RJ is very familiar with, trying to inform new processes that help make this a little more attainable, a little easier to sign up for. And that's part of that with the EV advisors. So I didn't hear, Peter, you still on the phone?
Yeah, I'm still here. Am I coming through?
Yeah.
Wow, awesome. So it's a little bit flying blind here, but Brandon, thank you. Brandon, are you able to put up that deck that I? Yeah.
I deleted your title slide, honestly, but
okay,
we're on the slide titled "Dealer and Consumer Insights Informed Our Strategy."
Awesome, cool. Well, I'll start into this and then pause occasionally here to read the room or take some direction from Brandon. I'm driving, so I'm trying to be safe in the process as well. Hey guys, I'm Peter Johns. I am the manager of dealership relations for XCEL Energy in all of our 8-state territories, but primarily focused on Minnesota, Wisconsin, and of course Colorado. By way of background, I spent a number of years as a sales manager for Volkswagen, Alfa Romeo, and Fiat. And part of the reason and part of the mission in coming over to XCEL a few years ago was that, as Brandon alluded to, one of the biggest things that we wanted to do is launch this concept of 1.5 EVs on the road in our territory. And one of the ways that we can really get traction against that, and a number of other goals, is to really embed ourselves in the sales process. With the exception, obviously noted with Tesla, it's still about 96-97% of Americans buy their cars at dealerships, and our customers are buying their cars at dealerships. So that first slide that's up there, that's a lot of information and research that we got from some pilot programs that we started a few years back, just to really kind of get an understanding of the EV journey and the EV purchasing process and what was happening and what people knew and didn't know. So some of the quotes and things are there directly from focus groups that we did and surveys that we did. And the focus groups were literally 100 EV owners in various focus groups with a monitor and questions and Q&A. And one of the surprising things that came back was the trust factor. At the bottom of the page, it talks about, that the buyers were really looking at the dealerships for information about EVs and the details and what's being provided. And conversely, the dealerships were less confident in their ability in that process. So there's a gap there. And what we wanted to do is figure out really the main solve. And the range anxiety issue is usually number one with most people when they're driving their electric vehicles. I mean, right now I'm on 35W north in Minnesota, driving to Duluth. I've got 175 miles of range left on the car. But you start thinking about that, right? It's like, where's my next stop? OEMs in the last 3 years, have really gone a long way to push that average up to close to 300 miles. On range, and obviously the proliferation of charging stations has helped a lot too. But the next thing that was really apparent is, what do you do after you buy the car? What happens? For the most part, at the dealership level, it's usually somebody in the F&I office, the finance where you sign the car out, handing them a business card of a local electrician and saying, "Hey, call Ed. He'll get you hooked up." And we wanted to introduce our programs at that point and at that juncture. So having some dealership background and some dealership knowledge and cadence and how these things are put together. And Brandon, you could just kind of move on to the next slide, I think. What we really wanted to create was a network of dealerships. XCEL's the fuel provider. We also want to be the partner in the purchase process. XCEL has a lot of brand equity. And we feel that if we partner with the right dealerships and the right processes, we can help assure the new first-time EV buyer that they're making the right decision and they have support throughout the entire campaign. So our goals are really pretty simple. We want to provide a best-in-class service for our customers in our territories. We want to align ourselves with what we believe to be some of the best trusted dealerships that we have relationships with. And those are broken up into two tiers, a gold and a silver. And that's really more by jurisdiction than by, ability of the dealership. A lot of the gold dealerships are probably more urban setting or a metro setting, and the silvers tend to be more suburban and more outstate, western slope, that sort of aspect. So under this umbrella, dealerships live and breathe by co-op advertising. Every ad you've ever seen has been partially paid for by the OEM and partially paid for by the dealership itself. One thing that was really apparent is a lot of support on advertising electric vehicles. So we created a co-op fund for education and for partnership with these dealerships so that they're out promoting specific EV models at specifically their dealership, and then tagging and bringing XCEL into the fold with our charging programs, with our dollar per gallon statements, and our overall ability to create a streamlined process for installing a charger at home, putting some cost predictability to that, and then really assuring the consumer at the dealership that when they buy the car, they enroll in our programs at the dealership. They can do it on one of those pillars that Brandon talked about, or on the desktop or mobile. So when they leave, they know that they've got predictability, they've got reassurance that we're with them on the journey, and they know that we're going to be installing and working with them to do that install at their house for a level 2 charger within 2 to 3 weeks of the purchase of the vehicle. So kind of the assets that we bring to the dealership is one on the gold level is that pillar. It is a seed fund that we put together as well. That pillar has a level 2 charger attached to it, along with a bunch of informational elements, and a tablet that we have on there that goes to that website, ev.xcelenergy.com. That site is really prolific in the sense that it's kind of a kayak of vehicles in the U.S., a cars.com. It has every EV sold in the United States right now currently available. It pulls OEM and EPA data, and then it also pulls every internal combustion engine. Everyone knows that the front end expense on a vehicle can be a little higher with an EV, even when you bring in some of the state and federal rebate programs. But what this shows is the cost of ownership over 3, 4, 5 years, and it shows the incredible value that starts to happen at about year 3, where you really start seeing the dollar value, the economics of owning an EV over an internal combustion engine. So some of the assets that also go at the dealership, we provide training. Dealerships know how to sell cars, and I think over the last few years, dealerships have probably taken a lot of knocks that, they're the stumbling block for EV adoption, and if they just knew how to sell them and how to train them. And a part of that has some merit to it, but the thing to remember is with dealerships, and as obvious as this sounds, they sell cars. That's what they do. And they sell cars based on consumer demand, not necessarily OEM data or OEM directives, or where they're getting pushed and pulled in one direction. They sell cars. And so when they start feeling the demand, which Tesla created when they started really hitting those 2, 3, 4, 500, pushing 600,000 units a year, that put pressure across the board because people were coming in to see what the competitive set could look like. So we want to arm the dealerships with the training, with the collateral support material, with the pillars, with the co-op advertising programs, and then the introduction in Minnesota and in Wisconsin and soon to be Colorado. I think it debuts in August. It's called Accelerated Home. It's a streamlined enrollment process that's on that website, whereas if you are an XCEL customer and you have Wi-Fi, that basically qualifies you for the program. So it's pretty simple. It's a cost predictability of about $45 a month for unlimited overnight charging. It also has a charger choice. You could get a level 2, I think it's Juicebox and ChargePoint. And then you're working with XCEL electricians that are under contract with us. So you start eliminating the wild fluctuations on pricing. When this was really starting to come to fruition in the last few years, you would see $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 installs, and a lot of times that's really not the case. It depends on how much copper you're running and variable factors there. But at the end of the day, in Minnesota and Wisconsin, we're finding that our costs are somewhere about $800 for the average install. As part of that Accelerated Home program in Colorado, when that comes out in August, we're also providing up to a $500 rebate for the consumer on that install cost. So their out-of-pocket could be as low as $100, $200, $300 to put a level 2 charger in their house, to have it fully equipped, and then find that cost predictability of about $45 a month on overnight charges, where 80% of the people charge their cars at home and they plug them in at night. It is subject to day rates and some things like that, but if you're working that overnight plan and programming the car or the charger for that, you've got some predictability in the process. So kind of to bring all of this home under this network that we've created, we have, I believe, a total of 33 in the network right now. We launched and started signing in March. The goal is about 230 dealers in our territories in the next 2 years, and the embrace has been significant. Dealers see this as a solution to providing a lot of the charging elements at home, and it allows the sales reps and the sales managers to work directly with the consumer on that solve, with the brand equity of XCEL, with the comfort and knowledge that they're working with a company that they know. We're in their house every day. And as Brandon pointed out earlier, one of the great things about this is as we continue to add more and more charging to the grid, it does drive the prices down. It drives our rates down, and that's a major goal of XCEL is driving rates down and providing that elimination of our carbon footprint and where we want to be by 2030. So I guess the concluding point is that right now Colorado has been really strong on its embrace on the dealership level. We work with Emic, Stevenson, the McDonald Group. We also have a program that helps pick up the infrastructure cost at the dealership because they have requirements from the OEM on how many chargers and what the infrastructure should be at the dealership. And then at the end of the day, even with dealership provided options on charging, we still come in more efficient and we still have a better price point. And under our accelerated home program, it's quite a streamlined process. Again, with an entity that everybody knows and understands within the adoption rate. So that's kind of my pitch, and I'm sorry if I went on a little long there, but that's kind of our situation right now.
Hey, right on. Well, thanks, Peter, and that's some interesting stuff for sure. That kind of draws our presentation here to a conclusion, but we'd love to start a little bit of a chat, answer any questions. I'm going to turn off the share here.
Hey, Brennan, my name is Christian Jorgensen here. I'm also an XCEL employee. I work in transmission out here in Colorado. First, is it possible for me to reach out to you directly at some point in the future if I have follow-up questions?
Heck yeah.
All right, just making sure. And then second, clarification on this this charging program with the rebate for the home charging network and stuff like that. When I first read about the program, it was my understanding that if I had some work done either through XCEL or through a private company and showed the work fait accompli to XCEL, that I would be eligible for a $500 rebate on the work that I did to install a home charger in my duplex, for example. Is that the case, or does it have to be through this specific program where I'm getting a charger from XCEL that's connected to the Wi-Fi?
No, the home wiring rebate is separate from the home charging service.
Okay. There's nothing on the home wiring rebate on the website.
Not yet.
Okay.
So we just got approval for these back at the beginning of the year, and program is being launched. So I would expect that in the next couple of months here, we'll start to have some stuff available on the web. But in the meantime, feel free to reach out. And I'll be honest, I'm less of an expert on the residential programs, but I can get you the right person for sure.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I saw where someone was using because you're changing all of your street lights to LEDs instead of the higher consumption ones, and there was a program, and I don't remember where I saw it, where they're actually putting plugs on street lights now in some places. Do you have any plans on that?
Not specific plans. It's definitely came up in the the RFP that we had open for charging equipment, but no specific plans again. But I think that's really where that research, innovation, and partnerships portfolio comes in, because it's stuff like that where we can kind of innovate for the next TEP or during the current one. However, that the streetlight charging works really well for charging right away, where it's kind of difficult, and I think that's where those community charging hubs are kind of meant to fill that gap a bit too. But that is dedicated charging equipment, not on streetlights.
Oh, okay.
Right. Hey, Brandon, how do you keep track of all the EVs that are registered and keep getting registered every month?
That's a great question. Peter, do you have any insight into that one? Or am I going to have to get back to you, Carl?
No, ask that question again. There was just a little bit of a glitch.
How do we know how many EVs are going on the road?
How many? It's through a system generally called Peuqet data, where the state does the registration on the new vehicles as they come through and they get licensed. And so you can extract that Peuqet data, and it breaks down the type of car it is, and so you get a recap. They refresh it every month based on vehicles sold that month, and so you can pull that, and that'll give you a pretty good identifier of what comes across.
Carl, this is RJ. I actually posted a link in the chat. There's a page on the Colorado Energy Office website, and they take that data that Peter just referenced and they make it into a much more user-friendly format. So that's a little bit up towards the top of the chat. And Brandon there and Peter, there are a lot of questions in there as well.
I just opened it up. Thanks.
Right.
I'm also throwing that link in my notes here.
Right on.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Peter, RJ, again, I have a quick. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was
going to say the raw data. No, the raw data from Peuqet is miserable.
Yes.
It's really a math and science project to start tearing that apart.
That's why the Energy Office actually hired a consultant to do that work for all of us.
Right on.
And Peter, it's RJ again. I do have a specific question vis-a-vis what you touched on, supporting the dealers and their franchises. I am with National Car Charging. Brandon touched on that earlier. So full disclosure, we get a lot of dealer outreach with their hands in their hair, pulling more hairs than Carl has left. Pardon that reference, Carl. Saying, what are we doing? Our OEMs are telling us we're going to lose our franchise if we don't get all this installed before the end of June, which ain't happening.
Right.
So the question becomes then, as you touched on your gold and silver partnership tiers, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that you were filtering that to mean those dealers have either subscribed to or completed enough training that they're now eligible for either one of those tiers, more so from the relationship that they have not only with the utility, maybe they put the kiosk in the store, which I have seen one of those at Boulder Nissan, but also
right on.
They are trained to interact with the customers. They will actually be able to sell an EV as opposed to push a customer that wants an EV to an internal combustion engine vehicle, which we've seen happen. Does it also, those two tiers, include what you also touched on, sort of that make-ready infrastructure to help them comply with what the OEMs are requiring from a DC fast charging and level 2 requirement?
Yeah, so kind of the screening process speaks to what you just mentioned there about, Boulder Nissan is kind of a poster case study in how they go about selling EVs. So it's the training, it's the enthusiasm, it's the relationships with the OEM, and then it's the relationships that they have with customers. I mean, I go through Yelp reviews on a lot of these dealerships that we decide to work with and come into the program, and so those are some of those things. But to get to the infrastructure cost, the frustration with the dealerships is, for 3-4 years it's been pure ambiguity, and then all of a sudden there's a lightning rod of requirements that have to come down because the manufacturer has spooled up, and Nissan, Volkswagen, and I think a few others are starting this financing arm within their financing division to help these OEMs defray that cost. But those are all retail out of pocket that they have to go through. What we're introducing to these guys is the infrastructure that we're willing to pick up, which is basically from the road to the panel, to the charger. In certain cases, you're looking at $60, $70, $80,000 of infrastructure that we're willing to work with and eliminate for those dealerships. So that's a long answer to a short question, but yes, we want to work with the dealerships that also have a desire to be part of those programs.
My question was long, Peter. Thank you. Will there be the similar kind of intake form that Brandon touched on at ev.xcelenergy.com starting June 25th that the dealers can also plug into?
So that intake form will absolutely be available to those dealers. Yes. It won't live on ev.xcelenergy.com though. So that website is hosted outside of the XCELenergynormal.com, and that's where the intake forms will be.
That's all good.
I'll get you the link.
Yeah, man. You'll see
I'll get this whole group the link if they're interested. Absolutely.
Good call.
Hey guys, this is Jim Burness, building on RJ's question. Given how dealers are under tight time pressure to get these car charging installations done, is there any priority for them in the queue?
Yeah, I think there's priority for any customer that's willing to bring on electric vehicle charging. I think we kind of operate when we're installing this EV supply infrastructure with a certain sense of urgency as much as possible, understanding, kind of the barriers in procuring material and the like. But yeah, overarching understanding that this charging is sometimes needed to be installed 6 months ago or a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah,
Thanks.
I think we're in the process now with Pete Kia on, I think there's somewhere in that 8 to 10 level 3s that they want to do an install, Brandon, if I'm not mistaken, where we left off.
Yeah, there's a good chunk of dealerships in the mix for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt really quickly. We can go back to questions because we've got a lot of good ones here later on, but I want to make sure that we have time to hear from Carl, who is here to talk, give a little introduction. He's from Rolling Energy Resources, who works with XCEL on some projects. So he's going to give us a little overview of what the company is and what they do.
Yeah, thanks, Julia. I'm also here with my colleague, Steve Foreman, who actually has a couple slides to show. And Rolling Energy Resources is the purpose in life is to provide telematics on EVs as they're rolling around the country in Colorado and everywhere else you go for summer vacations, and to keep track of charging, where you charge, how much you charge, and basically that enables us to calculate costs. And so if you charge when you're not home, or you charge when you're in Wyoming or Utah or somewhere else, we keep track of that as well. And so yes, we do work with utilities, that's our prime focus, but at the same time, we're also have a strong effort to work with clubs like this and individual EV owners so you can, when you get your electric bill, you won't have to scratch your head and lose all your hair. You can actually find out what your actual cost is per mile, per gallon, So at this point, I think I'll just turn it over to Steve Foreman to give you some details on that. Steve?
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it. And Julia, we really appreciate the time today. Get a chance to get introduced and help, be an ongoing sponsor in the group. Can you see my primary screen okay? Okay. So Carl did a great job introducing who we are. We're a Colorado startup. We really have a passion about what we're doing here. Most of our utility programs have been actually outside of the state up till this point in time, but we're interested in exploring a number of things here in the state. One of the things that Brandon talked about was the challenges associated with really understanding, when you get an EV, I mean, every owner that's been on here probably has gone through this curve of what is it like when I get my first EV? And, and our founder, when we started this process out, these were his actual bills from his utility provider, and, the power amount jumped, and all of a sudden he felt like, well, gosh, this is terrible. I'm paying a lot more money for my EV. But I don't really know how much of this was really because the EV came in the house, or did I do something else, or, was the summer increasing my air conditioning usage? I really couldn't tell. And so, we started thinking about this as we were working through programs with utilities and providing information to utilities about rate planning and infrastructure, and sort of getting an idea from an analysis point of view of kind of what are EVs doing to our grid. And we came up with a component in our program called My Charge, which really was a way of explaining the issue that we had, which is, how do we know what we're doing as an EV owner? And so we created this report as part of our programs that we rolled out to the utilities we're working with in other parts of the country. And, it covers a series of things. It covers about, how good and how effective are you as a good citizen in terms of leveraging utility feeds from green sources at certain times of the day, which is where we created our My Charge report. So something that kind of you can socially share with others to indicate that I'm doing a good job. And then the middle box on here is the gas comparison, which is kind of that first question, which is how much of that power consumption that's happening in my bill is actually coming from my car. And in the case of the gentleman that had 4 cars, or how much is coming from each car, so that I can actually see when I do it. And the gas equivalency, which I know Brandon pointed out, which is really very few people kind of understand what that equivalent rate is. And, we're seeing anywhere from 30 to 40% reductions in the cost of running those cars, just for its mileage usage. That's not including the savings you get from the reduced maintenance costs that are associated with it. So we do this on an ongoing basis with the members that are currently enrolled in our programs in other states. We provide quick tips for things that are unique for certain areas. We also provide a profile, the charging profile for the month, to kind of get an idea of how aligned are you with what the utility would like you to be aligned with in terms of peak charging periods. And it's just a quick snapshot. And this quarter, we kind of got to thinking about maybe we might do something different, and Carl alluded to that, which is we think that there might be some real value for existing EV drivers, but certainly new ones who start the EV journey, to potentially make this available to EV drivers direct, who are not part of a utility program. And so today we're talking about announcing this program that we're going to release to the Colorado EV drivers later this summer. And we're going to be looking at modifying the existing program and getting some input from existing EV drivers in Colorado to mold what we're going to release later this. And we're going to be looking for potentially some early adopters who will kind of roll in the program and help us refine it. But I mean, the good news is that we're going to put this program out at our cost. So when the EV drivers later this summer sign into our program, it'll be free. So that we really have a strong feeling about supporting the Colorado community, and Drive Electric Colorado and the group that you guys are part of, and how important this is in our economy and our health and our environment. And we're going to launch the program here in state later this summer. So our ask coming out of this is really just, email Carl, let him know if you're interested, either in helping us figure out what this should really look like, or to potentially be an early access program member, where we could enroll you early on and get you a chance to see what your profile looks like. And then we'll open it up wider at the end of the summer, towards the end of the summer, to a much broader audience here in the state. First through clubs like yours, and then on a broader nature.
Yeah.
And like I said, Julie, we just really appreciate the time to come and get a chance to share our message and tell about what we think is a really great success story here in Colorado as a Colorado startup. With that, just reach out to either Carl or myself, and we'd be happy to give you more information. We'd also be happy to answer questions if you got them now.
So I have a quick question. So I have solar panels as well. Do you can you kind of get that information and take that into account when you do your estimates?
Yeah, we can. We know what kind of chargers you've got and what the charging patterns are based on the car's telematics, Julia. It's a little bit less clear, and that's part of the thing we're going to work through the summer, is the impact on people that have panels in place and potentially solar, power walls in place, in terms of how that affects that charging component. It's a really good question, though. And, a lot of people ask whether the, direct telematics approach, which obviously Brandon referred to, it's really been our cornerstone, because we can actually get cars launched and signed up almost instantaneously with a couple of clicks, because we're leveraging the OEM's current applications interface. And so, there's no hardware to install to get this deployed. And it's just been really simple with the utility programs we've worked in the East and in the Midwest so far have been really good. And we've got a bunch that are coming up on the West Coast. And we really want to, have success with this, I'll call it direct to consumer program here in Colorado. We're going to launch here first.
Yeah, and one thing I'd just like to add, I love the program that Peter Johns described, working with the dealers, because I think that is a great point to leverage
Absolutely.
and educate. And I hope maybe we could participate with them as well. I mean, one of the things we notice is that it's one thing when people say, well, tell me how much I can save on electricity or how I can help the environment. But when we actually have a real My Charge report that says, here's how much I saved last month on my bill. And by the way, here's where I drove. Oh yeah, I went to Wyoming, I drove out to Utah, or I just commute. Whatever the characteristics are, we'll have real stories of actual savings, not just a theory, because people relate more to stories than they do to some theory. But we're also very interested, Peter, if we could maybe assist your efforts with the dealers. The dealers could even provide that kind of offering, because let's face it, COVID's almost over. People are going to not just be driving, are going to be leaving their house, not just driving to work, but going as far as they can for summer vacations. And we can track all that data because we track the car, not just the home charger. And thanks so much, Julia, for this opportunity. We look forward to engaging with your awesome group of people here and getting feedback so we can improve this for not just Colorado, but for the whole USA.
Well, I will definitely sign up.
Yeah, and I'm happy to work with anybody on any dealership aspects or whatever. I think my email is somewhere on a thread somewhere, so I'm happy to have offline conversations on what's happening.
Look forward to it, Peter.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah, I just put my email on the chat for anybody who wants to get information on the next offering we have. Thank you.
Gentlemen, this is Jim from National Car Charging again. Did you say you go through the vehicle's onboard system, not going through the OBD2 port?
I'm sorry, RJ, what was the question again?
Did you say that this is actually Jim, RJ's colleague?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim. Yeah.
No worries. We're often confused. Did you say that it goes through the vehicle's onboard system, not necessarily the OBD2 port?
Well, technically, we're actually interfacing directly with the OEM's API that interacts with their cars. So we're actually going through their network and not a physical port.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's really interesting. I'd love to learn more about that. Thanks.
Yeah, and that is one of the big differences, as opposed to having to put a dongle in like some of the other providers do, where they've got to ship it out and get it installed. We can light up immediately because we don't have that overhead cost and that time frame cost we've got to deal with.
Yeah, plus there's a security issue. Whenever you put a dongle in, you're going over a 4G network, which has been proven to be hackable. And the thought of somebody hacking into the controls of your car is a little bit scary.
Yeah, and we also do very, we're very careful about the permissions we ask from the car. We're very restrictive in terms of what we do. Everything's passive with one exception, in which we do have the ability to potentially start and stop a charge on a car, so that we can do the things like Brandon talked about, which is help homeowners or EV drivers figure out what the right optimum window is to charge in, based on the characteristics of what the time of use programs are that the utility has, as well as the driving patterns and existing battery capacity levels that an individual driver has. We can turn program charging on and off for a customer. And I think as we start getting mass adoption, that'll be a bigger and bigger challenge. It's not as big a deal for our friends at XCEL today when they have 2 cars on the block. But when they have 35 cars on the block, if you don't do a better job of managing the charging windows, you're going to blow their local transformers, which is not going to be good for anybody. And we're seeing that in Norway a lot, where we've got a lot more adoption rates where they're having transformer problems.
Yeah, the ability to delay the charging gives a potential for every, what I call mass customization. I mean, every EV driver could actually, say give their parameters of what do they want on their charging, how much it's saving versus keeping it full all the time. And that's something that chargers don't know what's in the battery, and we do. So that gives us a big edge there. So one of the questions we often hear is, well, I know there's a bunch of programs that'll save me money, but I don't know what they are. And I don't know how to, and then if I do know how they are, I don't know how to implement in my car. So it does it automatically for me. So that's really the underpinning intelligence of the system, to actually, once we know the rates and how they change, give you, the EV driver, the option to choose which one you want or optimize around your parameters, and automatically turn the charging on and off according to those parameters. Yeah, so I have my email in there. Very much glad to work with all the club members here, and see and get feedback and help get these ideas out, so we can all help be successful in meeting those goals XCEL talked about. And I'd like to follow up with Peter as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and Corin asked a really good question about making sure that the charging doesn't go up to 100%, and that's absolutely true. Our current program models that we're building in here optimized to the battery's optimal level. Like at Tesla, it may be around 91 or 92%, and other manufacturers are at different levels. So yeah, we've got about 12 or 13 factors that go into our scheduling algorithms for the length of time the charge needs to go and what time frame it needs to go in. We'd be happy to discuss those, offline or sometime in the future when we sit down and talk about the rollout of the initial program, direct customer program, and where that's going to evolve to towards the winter time and early 2022 for individual customers.
It looks like Kevin Sears has a question. He has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Question for Peter. When you were talking about the districts that you work in, states, I mean, in Wisconsin, do you work with the Midwest Renewable Energy Association?
I think there's a division that does a lot of work with sort of the outreach on surrounding profits, nonprofits, and I do recall that there's been some conversation with them.
Okay, and my next question is, I live in Longmont, which is governed by a public utility of the city and not in XCEL territory. But as far as educating people in our area on all these topics on EV, do you work with groups in these independent power zones?
Yeah, so we work with Clear, and we work with I think some of the clean city aspects, and we do build and kind of create this program so that it is portable in a sense to work with other surrounding utilities. On the Western Slope, one of the things that comes up all the time in Grand Junction in that area is, Holy Cross and how can we work with them to get them to see our programs. So there's outreach and dialogue. And ultimately, one of the goals of this program that we've created in the network is, can this, basically come down to a streamlined licensing process where it can roll to any co-op or any utility that sees value in it with their customers. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I think Cynthia Allison has a question. Go ahead, Cynthia.
All right, thanks. Brandon, I was wondering if you could talk a bit about the Charging Perks program that XCEL is doing with EV Pulse. I just learned about this the other day and actually sent in an application for it, haven't heard back yet, but I was wondering if you could talk about it a little bit.
Sure, I can certainly get you in touch with the right people. Again, that's not something I have a ton of information about. I apologize. It is part of dynamic and static optimization for charging, right? So selecting a charging schedule. But I guess if you have specific questions, I'd be happy to answer those offline too.
And just to piggyback on that, I think we just debuted a Charging Perks program in a pilot for Tesla owners. That was just on Wednesday. And Brandon, I can get that link out. It caps at 100, but I think we're trying to, do some more accommodation process with Tesla as well.
Right on. Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, okay, that might explain it, because I did sign up, but I suppose it's possible that I wasn't within that first 100 people.
Yeah, I think we had like 25 or 26 signups in the first few hours when we put it out there. So.
Andy Nyman has a question.
Yeah, thanks, David. I just wondered if anyone had any information regarding EV backup power to the home, regarding like Ford's new F-150 release information that they had that available. Maybe other manufacturers will follow suit, but what I could find on their website, you need a dedicated 80 amp circuit for that, but I'm not sure how it would work as far as not islanding to the back to the grid, or if anyone had any information on that.
I can speak to that a little bit. I've done a little research on that. Sorry. That was Andy, right?
Yes.
All right, Andy. So where islanding is concerned, anytime you're going to have any system that is going to generate its own energy onto the grid, that has to be cleared through your local utility prior to installing that type of system. So that's why when you have solar going up, you have to have utilities permission to actually turn on your solar and start generating from it. And for other manufacturers providing that kind of vehicle to grid utility, or even vehicle to grid utility is different than vehicle to home utility. You should be able to do vehicle to home utility as long as your vehicle allows it. Like Teslas don't allow vehicle to home utility in any shape or form, because then they wouldn't sell Powerwalls. So as long as your vehicle allows it, you can get a vehicle to home utility. And as long as your utility allows it and your vehicle allows it, you can get vehicle to home and vehicle to grid. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I knew. I was just basically referring to vehicle to home.
Yeah, Andy, the only other restriction on there is the existing warranty programs that are on the battery packs that are on the cars. Manufacturers are working at rewording those so that it gives you the option to use them other than in your car. But for most of them right now, they're written that would void your warranty if you moved power from your car to the home.
Okay, I was wondering, yeah, if there was other manufacturers that were going to follow suit or not.
I think all of them are going to follow suit because it seems like they're starting to rewrite their warranties to accommodate this, but it also is a backdoor for them to reduce their reliance. Because if you cycle your battery pack out of your car a lot of extra times to power your house, you're going to reduce the battery life of your battery packs.
Yeah, or to put power on the grid. You start cycling it to put it on the grid, that's going to add, that's going to take off your total number of cycles that you can use to drive with.
So it's just something to be aware of.
Looks like Jamie Kurtz is next.
Hi, yeah, I got a couple questions for Brandon. Looking down the road, you mentioned that the increased use of EVs will bring electric rates down. What kind of percentage of decrease, and when do you think the volume of sales of electricity will be enough to achieve that? That's the first question, and I'll listen to that answer and then ask my second.
Sure. That's a good question, Jamie. I have no information for you. We generally expect rates to decrease. We have teams working on rate design, but I couldn't give you any idea of what that looks like for how much and when.
Okay, and while we got a couple XCEL people, people's ears here, this is something I ask every time I see somebody from XCEL is, when is it going to cost less to get wind power or solar farm power rather than an extra cost? That's not my second question, but I wanted to slip that in. You guys probably don't know, but ask your coworkers.
Understood.
It'll cost less as soon as we can make wind and solar dispatchable. And by dispatchable, I mean on demand. So when we can make the wind blow and the sun shine, whether that's through incorporating storage or straight up magic, then it'll cost less.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
about the
storage.
only, outside of the XCEL world, there's a couple of utilities we're having conversations with in other parts of the country who are sending triggers to us to indicate they have excess power capacity from solar or mostly from wind at night. And potentially then directing EVs to be able to charge off of those sources in the middle of the night at a rate that's lower than what their standard rate would be. So it's a triggered based event versus a sign up for a certain rate program.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I know here at least based on my research, several utilities, they've changed their marketing for how often they revisit the market and how often they change who they're buying their electricity from. So they've changed how frequently they change their source down from like 1 hour to they recheck the market every like 10 or 15 minutes in order to find out what's generating the cheapest. And that's cut down on a lot of curtailments anyway, where like they have to shut down wind farms and stuff like that. So they're prioritizing wind and solar whenever they can, but it's not a perfect system yet. Still working on it.
Okay, well, good luck adding storage and smoothing that out. And then my second question is, Brandon, you mentioned XCEL incentives are coming for consumer purchases of EVs, and I was wondering if you had any information about what those programs will be and when they'll roll out here in Colorado.
Sure. So that program is kind of Peter's baby. I'll let him take that.
Am I still on mute?
No, you're good. I can hear you. Now you are. You got it.
How about now?
Perfect.
And I apologize. Can you just ask that question again here? There was a little
Sure.
noise.
Jamie was just looking for a summary of timing on those vehicle rebates.
Oh, so we're looking to launch the accelerated home program with the wiring install and all of the sign up processes I talked about. That's looking to come in August. And then there is an income qualified rebate program of about $5 million set aside for Colorado purchase on used and new, and we're looking to roll that out starting in September, and probably in earnest October is when we'll get real traction with that.
And do you have any details on how that might work and how much the rebates might be?
Yeah, I can give you some headlines. So we've partnered with Grid Alternatives
and they're going to be helping determine what income qualified is. It's a fairly complex process, but they're going to be the ones that are going to determine that. And in shorthand, the income qualified individual, once they go through that, will get a 10-digit code that will be presented to the dealership, which will be vetted in understanding the process, and then that will qualify that individual at least for applying for it. We're looking at about $5,000 off of new and $3,500 off of pre-owned. And so at the dealership, and most of this, hopefully will execute in the network, at the dealership, they'll be able to take that right off the MSRP and then file a claim with us, and we'll reimburse. On an individual basis, if they want to purchase the vehicle and apply later, then that'll go through the normal XCEL rebating programs.
Thank you.
Yep.
Julia, did you want to kind of scan down through the chat and make sure we've covered all the questions?
Sure. One I saw here was a question about your current time of use program. So my understanding is that recently you rolled out a time of use for everybody rather than just a specific program. So if that's the case, can you just go over what it is and what the hours are and things like that?
Yes, no problem. So the schedule is RETOU, residential time of use rate. So there's on-peak, a shoulder, and off-peak timing, and the charges vary from winter to summer, and then for that on-peak, shoulder, and off-peak. So in the summertime, ranging from little over 5 cents to 13 cents, and in the winter, ranging from 5 cents to 8 cents. Winter is June 1st through September 30th, or sorry, summer is June 1st through September 30th. Winter is October 1st through May 31st. On peak is weekdays other than holidays between 3 and 7 p.m., 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. Shoulder is weekdays, except for holidays, between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. And then the off-peak period is all the other hours.
Is there a link you could paste on here so that we can bookmark that and take
Yeah, 100%. So I'll link it's the XCEL rate book, which isn't the easiest read, and it's 500 pages. But if the key is to use the table of contents and look for the RETOU rate, and then scroll down one page, and that's got all the pricing information as well as all the timing details.
Yeah, and do you have any more information kind of like on the rollout of that? Because you can't sign up for it anymore.
No, I don't have information offhand now, but I can get that for you, sure.
All right, thank you.
No sweat.
And can you sign up for that if you have solar?
I don't know what the rules are around meter aggregation, but I don't think that's solar eligible. I don't know. There'll be details in that rate book as well.
And this rate will be for everybody eventually?
Residential customers. There's another rate, SEV, which is a time of use rate for commercial customers.
When does it apply to all residential customers?
As far as I know, it's available now, but these questions lead me to believe that that you can't enroll currently. So I owe you some follow-up information there.
Oh, I guess I was wondering if you didn't want to get into it. Is this an optional thing, or is this something that will be imposed on the entire residential ratepayer group?
Oh no, this is an optional rate. I don't know what the future plans are on everybody having a time use rate. I would imagine that's probably a good thing at some point, but I really can give you an idea.
Does XCEL have any programs for funding school bus EV conversions?
Yes, that's part of that research, innovation, and partnerships portfolio with the TEP. There's $2.2 million reserved. expect to see that in 2022. That program's still under formulation, though, working with stakeholders to kind of figure out how that's going to work.
As far as your support of dealerships, your programs with dealerships, do you also work with EV companies, Tesla and the EV startups and things like that, Rivian, which won't have dealerships? So is that something that you're doing or planning to do?
Yeah, there's been a pretty recent and good outreach with Tesla on some of the particularly with Accelerated Home and some of the wiring rebate programs that we want to kind of form an alliance with them. And then we've been in a lot of conversations with Rivian, really trying to break down to, you know, a vehicle that is delivered within the state, and if they're delivered within an XCEL territory, how we can tag that particular vehicle with information about XCEL's charging programs, so that it's kind of a concierge. So when, you know, the car's delivered or the truck's delivered for Rivian, they have a conduit to us. But we do have some pretty good conversations with Rivian. Like I said, we've opened up some good convo with Tesla. And then ultimately the goal here is this entire program has a certain flex to it regarding, you know, the non-dealership aspects of how a car is delivered. So, and then just as a footnote, we are in conversations with Ford, General Motors, Honda, BMW, and a few others on some software programming and things that we want to be able to, you know, design in some of the software charging with these OEMs as they would deliver to our territories.
Okay, so here's 4 questions, and I think we kind of touched on some of them, but I'm going to read them anyway if you want to like expand on. So what the first one is, what are the target electricity rates for Colorado, and will there be a discount rather than extra cost for signing up for wind power or solar farms? I think you touched on that. Vehicle to grid, we talked a little bit about that, and what XCEL rebates will be available for EV purchases in the future?
I think we covered a good chunk of that except for probably vehicle to grid, which we don't have anything planned yet other than in that research, innovation, and partnerships portfolio. And we've just mentioned that we've gotten a lot of interest from electric school bus operators, but no specific plans there.
And then, yeah, and just to put a final note on the income qualified, that's our rebate program for Colorado as part of the DEP. It is an income qualified rebate, and it does have a cap on the funding. I think it's scheduled for a 2.5-year play, but it is capped at about 4.9. And then we do have proposed in Minnesota a rebate program as well. It is not income qualified, so we're working through those logistics with the PUC and others.
Okay, well, that's all I see in the chat. If I missed your question in the chat, just you can just pipe up verbally as well. Or if anyone has any other questions, feel free to just ask them. Okay, well, it sounds like nobody has any other questions. So thank you to all of our many speakers today, and I want to talk about next month's program, which will be people from EV Match will be talking. So EV Match is a app website that allows you to rent out your home charger, and also rent other chargers if you're in an area maybe that doesn't have public chargers or a place where you tend to park and maybe you want to charge there. And then EV Match also has an interesting program for apartments to provide charging schedule for its tenants. So if you have an apartment complex and it has installed a few chargers, you don't have to rely on luck to see whether it's free or not. So that will be next month at let's see, when is it? July 17th, Saturday, July 17th, same time.
Great. Well, I want to thank the speakers again. We had Brandon and Peter and from XCEL, and of course Steve and Carl from RER. So I think it was an excellent meeting with a lot of questions, and we covered a lot of territory, and a lot of it was kind of new to the folks, and I think it was great.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, likewise. Thank
No,
you.
thank you.
We appreciate it.
Wait, before we sign off, I'm trying to type it, but I'm gonna not, if anybody has a Tesla and wants to ride in the July 4th Park Hill Parade, please email me. Let me just put it by email real quick. I didn't finish the message, but thank you.
Yeah, that Park Hill 4th of July parade is kind of good. We were in that a couple of years, and last year Denver Tesla Club was in there, and so
I couldn't get any. I don't even know if I tried this year to get the EVC interest because it had just petered out before.
Yeah,
but the Tesla Club is doing it.
Yep. So it's kind of a fun day on the 4th to do that sort of thing. So cool. Just gives us a lot more electric exposure out there. So great. And for those that have any interest in the Pikes Peak Hill climb, Monday is tech inspection at the World Arena. I always go there and see. We've got three Tesla Model 3s that will be in the race this year, and we have one Nissan Leaf from Japan will be here. So that'll be going, and that race will be a week from tomorrow.
David, I don't know if you noticed that Leaf, it's a dual motor. They put a second motor in the back.
Oh, wow.
Did they really? I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I'm hoping to be able to see that one.
Where did you find that information at?
Somebody had posted it on one of the AV pages a while back, and I started following the team.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that they've been doing a lot of things with the electrics on the peak over the years. The first really big year was in 2012, and a lot of things have happened up there since then. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes this year. Well, I guess we'll call this it for the day, unless anybody else has got any other announcement or questions.
Two things. On the chat, if anybody wants to save it, you can click those three dots and then save chat, and you'll be able to get those links later.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And remind you to have 007 sitting here ready for somebody to work on if anybody wants to come out and work on it.
Yeah, that's one of our projects. You can see in Scott's picture in the background there is the 007 that we saved from a crusher, and as COVID frees up and so forth, we're going to try to see if we can get that fixed up enough to get it into the Forney Transportation Museum up in Denver. So. Cool. Well, thanks everybody. Have a good rest of the day.
You too.
We'll miss seeing you on Father's Day, but as usual.
All right.
Happy Father's Day, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.